But a deal that was made today, breaking news earlier this afternoon of a disgruntled player in the NBA, is the James Harden deal. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Harden was traded from the Rockets to the Nets. Boatload of draft picks, several players bringing huge blockbuster trade in the NBA this afternoon.
I mean, this is really one of the biggest trades that we've seen most recently in the NBA. And if Deshaun Watson gets traded, this will be as big of a trade as James Harden getting traded today. So, I mean, you've seen it was a dump of picks that they traded over. Brooklyn's receiving 4 first-round picks, I believe 3 from Houston and 1 from Milwaukee. Is that what it was? One of Milwaukee's first rounders through the Cavs.
Yep. Exactly.
So 4 first-round picks. Also, Karis LeVert, who we've talked about on this show before, is really a developing high player. He's part of that deal. But, I mean, you're getting the James Harden. You're getting a big 3 of James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving. I know Kyrie Irving currently doesn't want to play basketball, but maybe this is the move that really gets him excited to come back and play basketball, playing with these guys. And I mean, I think automatically everybody says, it's obviously it's a championship caliber roster immediately, but I think you still have to fill in a couple of pieces around. If you look at the Warriors, when they acquired all those, Clay, KD, Steph, they still had a couple of guys around, like an Andre Iguodala. They had DeMarcus Cousins for a year. So Brooklyn is still going to have to go ahead and piece together a couple of people to make this a championship roster. But, I mean, right now, you have 3 scoring machines. Kevin Durant, Kyrie are two-way players. If James Harden could pick up his defense a little bit more, he'd be a two-way player. But, this guy's an unbelievable player. I think we talked about him, obviously, on this show before. Leads double-doubles, 40-point double-doubles in the league. He's just an unbelievable guy. I know we talked about how he's a little bit out of shape right now, but is still really tearing it up. And most recently, I was saying how this trade reminded me of the epic Ricky Williams trade, where the Dolphins and the Saints exchanged a player and a ton of picks. And it's realistically hedging the future of your franchise on one player. And I don't know. Brooklyn's gone ahead and done it, so we're going to see what happens.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for both teams just to get the parameters of the trade. Obviously, the Nets get Harden. Rockets get, for players, Dante Exum, Rodions Kurucs, who's has been around the NBA for a few years, but mostly just a bench player, if that. Journeyman. They had Karis LeVert. Then they flipped him. This actually became a 4-team deal. Karis LeVert's going to the Pacers. Victor Oladipo's coming back to the Rockets. So the Rockets get Oladipo, Kurucs, Dante Exum, and then they get 4 first-round picks. One of them's Cleveland's pick through the Bucks. So it's the Bucks draft pick that goes through Cleveland to the Rockets. And then the Rockets get 4 pick swaps with the Nets. So this is even bigger than the Nets trade that the Celtics made.
Huge
so
trade.
The Rockets actually control the Nets draft from this year all the way through 2027. So you have 8 years of drafts where you're either picking, you either have the Nets pick, crazy, or you're swapping with the Nets pick if their pick's better. And here's the other thing. Durant, Kyrie, and Harden, I believe, are only on the books for the next 2 years for the Nets. I believe if at least all 3 of them together would only be with the Nets for the next 2 years. Now, if things go really well, they might want to stay there. They're in New York. Why would they want to go anywhere else? We'll see what happens there. But they got to get it done over the next 2 seasons. So if they don't, and then the Nets struggle, if those guys leave, all those picks are going to be going to the Rockets, just like it happened with the Celtics. And that's how the Celtics got Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and a few other players. So I think it's the move that the Nets wanted to make. I think this makes total sense for the Nets, but it's an all-or-nothing trade. Whereas the Rockets, this is the best trade they're going to get. The other trade that was kind of on the table, I think, was if he had gone to Philly and they had gotten Ben Simmons back, he probably would have been the best player that they could have acquired for James Harden right now, as far as top talent that's good right away. But getting Victor Oladipo in the deal, I think is a huge pickup too for the Rockets. He wants a fresh start. You still have John Wall there. So you don't want to leave John Wall by himself without another guy to play with, to run up and down the floor with. And now Oladipo, who's very athletic, who can shoot, very good defensive player. When he's healthy, he's battled some injuries over the last couple of years. But I think this might even make the Rockets a little bit better, not because they got the best player in the trade. Obviously, that was Harden. He's on the Nets. But I do think, if you look at it, the Rockets team overall might be in a better position because of how poorly Harden's attitude was over the last couple of weeks. People forget, too, he didn't start the season off in the very beginning because he didn't show up. And then, he had to go through COVID protocols and such. And then he started playing, and he's overweight. I mean, he's overweight compared to an NBA player. His overweight is my in shape. But, he didn't start off the year well. So I think this makes total sense for both teams. And then the Pacers and Cavs. I mean, the Pacers just got Karis LeVert, who, is a very good player. I think, LeVert's going to really help the Pacers throughout the season. And this is a huge shift in the East. Brooklyn is now the favorite, and I think Indiana, you got to kind of creep them up a little bit too as contenders in the East as well in the NBA.
Yeah, if I have to look at this through a GM's perspective or even a coach's eyes, I think Houston is really the one that won out in this trade. With all those draft picks, you've got a future really built up for your franchise, a lot of options. You don't have to go ahead and make those draft picks, too. You could use those to go ahead and acquire other players to play alongside John Wall and Victor Oladipo. I think the addition to getting Oladipo is huge because obviously you lose your number one scoring threat in James Harden, but getting a scoring threat like Oladipo in return, he can really light it up in times, and he's a really great player. And I think he's been wanting to move. The Pacers have been wanting to move him. So I think the Pacers kind of just jumped in and took advantage of this deal and kind of said, hey, can we get in on this deal too and kind of move our superstar? And that kind of helped things as well. But it honestly helped Houston in the long run. I think they're the one that's acquiring the talent for the long haul. Brooklyn is built to win now. But if they don't win now, everybody's going to say that this was a bad decision and a bust, giving up the majority of your draft picks going forward and giving up a player like Karis LeVert, who's a young guy that was really developing. So, I mean, it's definitely a situation that we want to watch going forward, and I'm sure that it'll be a topic going forward on the show.